Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to this week's astrological report. This is for December 16th through December 22nd of 2025. I hope you're all doing well. In fact, leave me a comment. Let me know how you're doing, how these transits have been treating you recently. As far as for the world and the week ahead, we have a lot of powerful dynamics playing out up in the sky, and we're kind of at the cusp here of a change, really big change, not only for a new lunar cycle, but a change of season and the solstice coming in as the sun will ingress Capricorn for this report week, and a change of focus. But before that, before we get to the Sagittarius new moon, which will be on Friday, December 19, with this new cycle, the sun and Venus have to make some challenging aspects along with the moon, including the sun squaring Saturn. That's perfect on Tuesday, December 16. It's the last quarter square, so it has its roots in the past, and I'll talk about the meaning of that and what it might and how it might play out in the world and how it might affect us. And the sun is also building up the square to Neptune as well. That square to Neptune will technically be after the new moon. So the new moon will also be square Neptune very tightly in a separating square from Saturn. So we really have this big battle going on this week between the end of Sagittarius and the end of Pisces. And again, it's all connected to things of the past and things that are ending and closing out before we're really in the big new beginning that's coming up for 2026. So I'll be talking about this square, but it is a challenge. There's no way around it, and it has a lot of different meanings that I'll mention in this report. We also have Venus making a trine down to Chiron. We have Venus making an inconjunction to Jupiter in Cancer. We have the sun also inconjunct to Uranus at the end of Taurus. And that will be a part of the new moon as well. And then after the new moon on December 19, this Friday into the weekend, we have Mercury reaching a T-square with the nodes of fate, so a very fateful crossroads for everything about Mercury. Another thing, though, is Mercury is now leaving its retrograde shadow and entering new territory. So that's positive development. We're looking ahead. We finalize that retrograde process, and then we come into this fateful kind of decision or this crossroads that's going to be coming up. But again, that'll be exact on Saturday with that fateful alignment around news and information and thoughts. But on that same day, this weekend, the sun is squaring Neptune perfectly. So I'll talk about the meaning of that, and then the sun will be at this last critical degree before this big change arrives. At the same time, this weekend, Venus is squaring Saturn perfectly. So this is really going to challenge relationships and money in this dynamic as we go through this week. So Saturday, well, let's just say this new moon, Friday and into Saturday, has a ton of major developments connected to it that I'll be describing in this report. And then on Sunday, December 21st, Jupiter is making another exact square to Chiron again. This back and forth over amplified wounds and sensitivities for people in the world and what's going on, which has a strong connection to what's happening this week with that square, since both the Pisces and the Sagittarius square are all being ruled by this Jupiter in Cancer. Square Chiron comes back to a safety and a security warning for the week ahead and for the rest of this year into the new year. I'll explain more about that as I go through this report. And then on Sunday, December 21st, we reach the solstice with the change of season and a change of focus from that point forward. This new moon in Sagittarius, it's almost like a transition new moon between Sagittarius and Capricorn, because after the new moon, when the sun reaches Capricorn, the moon will still be in Capricorn. It's almost like a Capricorn new moon, but we'll get that in a month from now. But it's still this combination of Sagittarius into Capricorn. We're going to enter this more grounded, practical energy about goals and ambitions. And we do have this very strong Mars now. It's still within orb of a square to Neptune, but it's going to be separating from that as we go through this week. But then it's going to be highlighted by the sun, moon, and Venus. So Venus will be squaring Saturn this week, but it will be in orb of a square to Neptune as well, even though that will be exact the following week, next week. And then Mercury will have to catch up to that eventually and also go through those squares, and then we'll be done with this dynamic that's in place for the world in this very rare way, once in a lifetime way, actually. So again, it all comes to things of the past with this last quarter, which is the kind of the crisis in consciousness phase of the Sun, Saturn, Neptune cycle that started back in March of 2025. Again, I'm going to get more into that as I go through this report. And then it looks like the last major aspect by next Monday will be Venus also in conjunct to Neptune right before it squares. No, I'm sorry. Venus in conjunct to Uranus right before it squares Neptune for next week. So those are the major aspects. Of course, you can find them always written out for you in the description below. If you like my video, if you like my reports, hit that like button. It does help out a lot in sharing this with new people. Okay, so with all that, the moon is waning through Scorpio and most of Sagittarius for the first part of this week, entering the dark moon phase of the last cycle until that moon reaches the sun for the new moon. And then the moon will be waxing instantly right into Capricorn for 2.5 days, building this new beginning. And then we'll reach Aquarius by Monday. So the moon is in Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius for the week ahead. And the moon will cross over all these planets. And the last conjunction will be Moon Pluto by Monday in Aquarius. All right, so let me get started here, and we'll start going through each day for the week ahead. Starting on Tuesday, December 16, we start things off with the moon in Scorpio in the dark moon phase. Well, technically it's not quite in the dark moon phase yet, but it's getting close. It's losing its light. But it's halfway through Scorpio, so Tuesday still has this emotional edge to it, this emotional depth, a little more private and hidden, but we still have the main focus here, obviously in Sagittarius, which is about big energy, usually much more optimistic. But again, we're really dealing with this tight square between both of the Jupiter signs, the feminine side of Jupiter, which is Pisces, and the masculine side of Jupiter, which is Sagittarius, and they're both in a battle with each other. And so that's going to be an overwhelming theme all week long, is this battle, in a sense, between Pisces and Sagittarius. And as the moon is going through Scorpio, it's still bringing up a lot of this deep, intense emotional energy that's below the surface. And so what we have here, the main aspect for Tuesday, is the sun squaring Saturn perfectly as the day goes on for Tuesday. Now, the circumstances with the moon on Tuesday in Scorpio is being ruled by Mars, and now Mars is exalted in Capricorn under the rulership of Saturn. So it's like what drives us, our motivation, our action plan, it wants to change gears now. We still have this kind of this Neptune influence, though, that it can still cloud some judgment, cloud some activity, because Mars is still very tightly square Neptune, only a degree off there. So even though Mars is very powerful, you still have to give it time. Once we fully get into this new moon, and then next week we're really moving forward through the Capricorn, this Capricorn vibe of everything is going to really take over, and Mars will be in a much stronger position for taking good action and being more inspired, having more strength and determination to reach our goals and our ambitions. And that's kind of what's going to come into focus this week with the solstice, is the sun is going to start focusing on goals, ambitions, or wherever you have Capricorn in your chart personally, that's where the new transits will be coming in. But so we're kind of starting to get that flavor of, okay, what is our goals? What are our plans coming up for the new year? And what do we want to take action on? And at first, I feel like this week there's going to be a lot of closing out of things of the past, dealing with things of the past still, even though there's that bigger theme all the way until the end of February, until we get to our first eclipse in Aquarius. We're still like closing out the past in a bigger picture of life. But this is a short term for this week, the moon waning, letting go, releasing emotional tension and pressure or deeper dynamics that are hidden that people are dealing with. But overall, the moon is not really making any tough aspects here. So emotionally, there's one in conjunction going on as the day goes on Tuesday between the moon and Chiron. Again, adjusting to so much Chiron that's been activated in multiple ways. You know, I was talking about this last week, how I wasn't sure if all this Chiron was going to show great opportunity for healing with new positive dynamics or more wounds and injuries. And obviously we saw some big events going on in the world that showed definitely wounding happening. And that's still in place. There's still a lot of potential for problems here this week and into the new year. And I think that this square, it does have a warning I would give about it. There is a fear that's in the world right now with this Saturn being highlighted from behind the scenes. And that's part of the square to Saturn is fear and worry. And it has a lot of different meanings for different people. But on the global level, there's a fear and a worry of an attack. There could be more attacks even with this, not just this week, but actually in the coming weeks here, especially based on the United States Progress chart that I was checking out earlier. I want to try to get a video out for the new year for people about the United States and other kinds of charts, but this is still problematic and shows issues are very possible on the global level around the world in different places. And for the United States is a Sagittarius rising country. I know some people don't like to believe that, but that's the chart I work with. And so all this is in the first house of the United States, squaring that Saturn and Neptune. So there is some worry and fear here going on globally, and for some people it could be personally with your own personal issues that are being highlighted that are stressful behind the scenes for some people here. But again, it's this battle here. It's a Jupiter battle. And the reason I say it's safety and security issues and warnings is because, again, both of these signs being squared come back to Jupiter in Cancer, safety and security. And that Jupiter rolling both of those signs in a tight square with Chiron. So even though there was already some attacks and some world stuff going on last week, to me it looks like it could very well continue this week in certain places as well. I would not be surprised, and even into the new year next week too. So Christmas into the new year. This report stops right before Christmas, so again, that'll be next week's report, because Mercury will have to again follow up with all that and also make those squares. So we're not going to totally get rid of this for a little bit here. Plus it's kind of rooted in this entire cycle for the next month of potential issues that this square could be talking about. So one issue again is home, family, safety, and security for people around the world is a concern here in different ways. And then also it's about beliefs and faith and truth and understanding of things that I've been talking about for a while that we've been dealing with, and how I've been talking about how, scandals and conspiracies and truth and what's real and what's not real. Again, we're closing out this long era of Neptune and Pisces since 2011 into 2012 that's been distorting the world in so many ways. And this is one of the last quarters of that era being triggered that leads to major world changes. And so there's a negative light being shined on what's behind the scenes here. So there could be more things being revealed, more secrets, more conspiracies or scandals that are coming out in a negative light for the week ahead. This can also put a negative light on some world leaders or powerful people in the world. The sun, squaring Saturn and squaring Neptune, that can lead to disillusionment, disappointment. That can lead to exposure in a negative way because of the square happening. The thing is, though, it still is this battle of truth and what's real. And I'm still not convinced that we're seeing total truth out of this because of the Neptune so enhanced, so amplified here at the last degree, recently stationary, critical degree, a sense of an ending, but there's still so much delusions and fog and lack of clarity in some situations that are private and hidden, that are going to get triggered by what happens this week in the world. So again, I think certain world leaders or famous people are going to go through a challenge. A few or one or something major in that way could happen this week with this square from the sun to Saturn. Now, the sun square Saturn, it's all day long, perfect. It's even on Monday, it's Tuesday, it's Wednesday. It's kind of this whole time period. It's not just a one-day thing, even though it's perfect here on Tuesday. But again, this is a last quarter square. It comes back to when the sun was conjunct Saturn. That's when this cycle started, the conjunction of Saturn-Sun. That is a cycle that's about responsibility and commitment and duty and obligation and what we're seriously having to deal with and look at in our lives. And again, that was rooted back in March of 2025. Think about what was happening back in March of 2025. We had the beginning of the tariffs starting, and the market took a huge dip right after the conjunction of Saturn and the sun, and Venus was there too with all this. There was so much going on here with Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces. And so the sun has come all the way around. It went through the first quarter already. It had the full moon kind of a vibe already. And now it's at the last quarter of this Sun-Saturn cycle, which is kind of like, again, the crisis in consciousness of our responsibilities, our commitments and duties. Or it could also be about where certain people have fear and issues that they're dealing with on a private behind the scenes level that they've been dealing with, all year. And now there's one last big trigger of this issue that's being highlighted, but it's kind of, again, in this negative way because of a square. And, the sun is the vitality. The sun is the light, the solar energy, and it's running into this heaviness, this pressure, this weight, this burden that's affecting the light. So it can also show this week that people are feeling more heavy. People could be a little more cynical, or, normally the Sagittarius is very a positive placement of being optimistic and faithful and hopeful and looking at the bigger picture. But there's something that's behind the scenes affecting that perception of the positivity that's holding us up a little bit, that's blocking us a little bit from that more positive side. Now, it doesn't mean everything is completely awful. Doesn't mean everybody's having a negative experience. This is just the background energy for the world. And it all depends on how it affects you. But look at your chart. Where do you have Sagittarius? What area of life is that? And what area of life is Pisces for you? Those two areas are battling right now in your life in some way. Even if you have no planets in Sag or no planets in Pisces, you still have two areas of life where those signs are. And they're battling right now. So look at your chart and see. And then also see if you have any personal planets between 25 and 29 degrees of Sagittarius or Pisces. Also Gemini or Virgo. If you do, then you're really wrapped up in this mutable square. A mutable square is also a square that's messy usually. It's all over the place. It's about having to be flexible and adaptable and changeable to what's being focused on, what is coming up, what do you have to look at. And it really, again, because it's a last quarter square, it comes back to a need for an ending and letting go and accepting and integrating, and being honest and looking at the truth of what is behind the scenes that's affecting your life in a major way. And again, this is a bigger picture of this Pisces area that's trying to be refreshed for the long-term future. And we're so close. Because we'll have this Saturn-Neptune leaving Pisces soon. That'll be a big help for Pisces. And then we'll have one more eclipse in Pisces at the end of August of 2026. That is the last big finalization of this refreshed, renewed vibe for Pisces for the long-term future. But there's a lot of old stuff that's an issue, stuff of the past that's still an issue that we have to work on, that we have to deal with, let go in some way. Now, it's not going to be every single person that has some major issue this week, but that's the general background vibe, is an issue from the past that has to be dealt with, that we're closing out, and on the world stage, again, it comes back to a lot of scandals and conspiracies and hidden truth and things that are we're seeking that truth and those answers, and those truth and those answers might not be what we want to hear. It could put a focus on something kind of negative that's coming out, but I do think that there's this kind of final battle about truth and what's real and what's honest. But it's also just generally about beliefs and faith too. And it could also be religious. Of course, this is a religious time of the year. And I mentioned that with the Mars square Neptune, how, that tension could have also been connected to a religious belief, taking action on a belief, which was kind of that terrorist attack. And the fact that Mars is still leading the crowd, and Mars is still within this dynamic too. So I would not be surprised if there is more attacks on the global level, if there is another issue coming out. And at the very least, even if it doesn't manifest, it's in focus, and there's fear and there's worry and there's a warning of safety and security that does have a strong potential of leading to some major issue this week or next week, So most of us won't be affected by it, because usually these are global events and they happen one or two places around the world, but most people aren't affected. But then, people watch the news, the media, they take in the energy of it, and they still are emotionally affected by it or psychically affected by it. And this is the collective unconscious too, where all this is taking place, the burden, the weight, and the pressure. And there's an ending here that needs to take place. And whatever that ending is, it's going to come into focus for us to see and to look at in this perspective. And the fact is, Venus is there too. And, what is of value? What about relationships? What's of value for you? And money, resources, the global financial situation too is at a turning point this week into next week. I would say that normally this would not be a good sign for certain markets, but normally the stock market tends to try to gift people a little bit of something nice at the end of the year. But there is some sort of a dynamic we'll have to go through here this week about money and resources, depending on if it aligns with your personal planets at the end of these mutable signs in your own chart. So it won't be for everybody. But it's also a last quarter about relationship stuff for people too. Where are you committed? Do you have any duties or obligations in certain relationships that give you a sense that you're not free, that you are obligated? And then another test, another challenge about relationship, commitment, duty, and obligation, or where you stand in the bigger, longer term picture about relationship. Some of these dynamics will be coming up for people to process and try to get more clarity about. But Sun square Saturn, again, it's Tuesday here, pretty strong, and it's the biggest aspect of the week, I think. So you want to kind of, if you have something serious that you have to do, then that's fine. It's a part of this dynamic. It's a part of the process. But I would not choose to do something that's important that you need to get done on this day necessarily, because there will usually be a sense of a block or heaviness or restrictions or weight or burden or pressure, that could come along with anything that you're trying to do here on Tuesday. It all depends on your birth chart, though. Maybe you have some good planets in fire and air, and the sun isn't in a good alignment with you, and Saturn isn't really messing with you. Then, you might be able to get away with it. But generally speaking, I would try to avoid Tuesday here. I'm making this report on Monday because I don't feel like getting up early in the morning and getting this all out for you guys like I did last week. It was rough. Waking up early. I'm sleeping in these days till like 8 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, be patient, plan appropriately. This could be issues with traveling and transportation too, with Sagittarius in this square. There could be some delays, some blocks this week that's coming out with this. So just be aware of that and take your time, plan appropriately, have a backup plan, be flexible and adaptable to changes if they should come up. And also the Sun square Saturn can also have a health component to it. It can kind of dampen the light. It can reduce the vitality. It can have an effect on the general confidence of people in this time frame. So you should also take really good care of your health this week. You might need to limit overindulgences if that's part of the problem, which sometimes it is with all this Sagittarius and Venus being involved. Have you been going overboard with certain things and now you're running into a consequence or the results of something like that? So just take extra good care and be more cautious of health and diet during this time frame. And just, again, don't let your confidence get wrapped up into this issue. And just be mature and responsible. There is a sense that we're not quite free here, generally speaking too. Sagittarius wants to have more adventure, more fun, more freedom, more independence. But what is holding us up from that? Again, it comes back to what's behind the scenes in our lives and how we live our daily life. How do we live our daily life in ways that other people don't see that affects our health, our work, our routine? Those are the things that are trying to be dissolved away, finalized, ended, bad patterns, bad habits that have an effect on us. So a lot of these things in different ways can be highlighted this week for different people. I do think that there could be death, unfortunately, but death is an everyday thing of life. So when I say this, I mean death on a level that's more rare in some way, like a leader or someone famous, the sun basically running into something difficult here. So on a mundane level, it can be loss or death or something for some major characters or something. But that's just a side possibility there. So I think people that are really affected by this are people that have about 25 degrees of one of the mutable signs, because you've been going through the Saturn all year, and this is the last big challenge that you have. And it's the last big challenge from this point forward for the next couple months for people that have 26, 27, 28, 29 of one of the mutable. Because then, Saturn's direct, it'll start building up momentum. Neptune will leave that square. The sun was entering it. So again, it's people really most affected by this that have late degrees of the mutable signs. All right. So again, it's a kind of a tough day, generally speaking, for Tuesday and maybe Wednesday, even a little bit of Monday. But that's the main aspect for Tuesday. I went kind of long on that. We also have, right after that square is perfect, the moon in Scorpio does make a trine down to Jupiter. So it feels like there's still, in a more private way, some support here going on. But again, these two areas are more private, more inward. And that only will last for a few hours, that Moon-Jupiter alignment, which can help counterbalance some of the pressure here that's coming up. But the first part of the day is pretty tough, and most of all of the day and for the week ahead. Okay, so again, those are the three aspects for Tuesday. We move forward and we get to Wednesday on December 17. We start things off with the moon at the very last degrees of Scorpio before it changes signs. This is where the moon is beginning to enter the dark moon phase and losing its light, closing out the last cycle. There will be a change, though, as the day goes on, and the moon will change signs. But we start things off first with the moon trine Saturn from Scorpio to that Pisces Saturn. So that shows that the circumstances and the mood is more in alignment with this seriousness, this emotion, this responsibility that we've been picking up on in a difficult way, or whatever came out for Tuesday, we're dealing with it in a better way on Wednesday emotionally for a few hours there. It can be more mature, more stable. And then the moon is opposite Uranus. So things are pretty dynamic really early in the morning. This will be first thing in the morning for people in Europe. As you're waking up, this is all taking place. And again, it's the overnight hours, Tuesday into Wednesday morning for most of us. But there can be some disruption, some unpredictability. But then the moon aligns with Neptune, the dreams, the fantasies, the illusions. And again, it's all watery still. It's this last water grand trine. This is literally the last aspect of this continuous water grand trine we've been dealing with. And the moon closes that trine out, and we're done with it. And then the moon changes signs into a totally different vibe for the rest of the day, the second half of the day, as the moon ingresses Sagittarius. Now we have a stellium here in Sag, 4 planets. Well, I look at 3 as a stellium, but adding 1 more. And so a ton of Sagittarius, which again is about faith and belief and philosophy and truth and understanding the bigger picture of life. Religious things are really in focus. Travel. It is more of a joyful dynamic. It's just that the sun is still within this dynamic of Saturn, and now Venus is building up into it as well. And we're still picking up on this heaviness, seriousness that's behind the scenes. That feels like, even if there's no major issues for every single person, which there won't be, there can just be still this sense of, it's just like, it's not all that great, whatever's taking place because of that square, most likely. But now the moon is in Sag for the next 2.5 days, building up to that new moon, but it's in the dark moon, ruled by Jupiter, still comes back to this Jupiter and Cancer, safety and security issues in that square with Chiron. It looks like a red flag to me. Continuing. Possible more wounds and injuries. But now we'll have one final aspect for Wednesday, December 17th, and that's the moon making the sextile to Pluto. So there's a better connection to the group and the friends and the community and the social life on Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening for a few hours. Okay, and we get past those, which looks like Wednesday seems pretty decent as long as nothing is carrying over from that Sun-Saturn in a literal way. Whether that would manifest on Tuesday or Wednesday. But that's still the background no matter what, is that tight square. Okay, and then we move forward and we get to Thursday on December 18. The moon crosses over Mercury first thing in the morning. Again, it's super early morning hours, but it creates this more emotional need for communication. And again, Mercury's now moving forward out of its shadow and into new territory. So we have this sense that things are starting to move forward in a new way, but also the seriousness and the responsibility or what we have to deal with that comes along with that because of the square going on. But Moon Mercury, it's mentally stimulated, a variety of things happening, very active, very busy, doing a multiple of different activities potentially here with all that. And then this is where the moon is T-square the nodes of fate as the day goes on Thursday. This will be Thursday late morning, Thursday afternoon, depending on where you live. And it's the initiation of this square that Mercury will follow up with later. So both the moon and Mercury have to go through that T-square. Remember, all the other planets went through that T-square as well. It's this process of fate and destiny, putting people at a crossroads about decisions. Again, coming back to issues of work, of service life, of health life that's trying to change for some people. And then again, things that are happening privately behind the scenes that nobody can see or know about is also affecting decisions and what's happening. And whatever does happen, again, it's going to have a long-term effect on the future based on what's coming out here this week and what's already been kind of showing for a while. But Mercury will be the last planet that activates that T-square. So just know it's a very fateful day on Thursday. I would just say all week it's fateful because of these different activations throughout the week. And then we also have the Venus reaching 22 degrees in that trine with Chiron, but Chiron has the big square from Jupiter still. So again, there's a lot of Chiron that's talking about the need for healing. So either difficult things can be happening for some people that are causing wounding that also requires healing as a result. Or again, just having to look at the self, the ego, our freedom, our independence, our connection to home and family, things like that. And Venus relationships. They are in a healing dynamic, but the fact that Venus is building the square to Saturn and Neptune still shows some issues that need to be worked out in some relationships and some financial matters for the week ahead. And then Venus is also making that in conjunction to Jupiter at the same time. So adjusting desires, relationships, money, and resources to what comes back to home and family and safety security needs that are so highlighted during this time period for people. So adjusting to between the home and the family, the inner private life versus desires for something bigger, something that's beyond what we already have here. And those are the last aspects for Thursday. We move forward. And the moon is approaching Venus as we get to Friday on December 19. So this is the new moon day, but first we have a lot of aspects before the new moon is exact, including the moon trine Chiron, where Venus just went through. The moon connects to that need for healing on some level. It can be subtle too, or not so, depending. The moon is in conjunct to Jupiter, just like Venus did. Again, adjusting to home and family, safety and security needs versus what's above and beyond and bigger in the future. And then the moon is conjunct Venus. But they're both within orb, 23.5 degrees. They're both building the square to Saturn. So normally the Venus-moon conjunction is, I like it. It's a lot of times very sweet and pleasurable and good for love and relationship and social activity. But again, this is the dark moon, the darkest that it gets, and it's a square to Saturn. So right after this conjunction, the moon squares Saturn, and then that's followed up by Venus building the square to Saturn. At the same time, the sun is within orb now of a square to Neptune, and the new moon will be square Neptune. So there's still this issue, this continuous issue between these two signs about belief and faith and what's real and understanding of things that we're trying to get past and work past, either internally and then on the global level of what's happening. It's still, it's such an interesting combination that we really don't get that often with this Neptune Saturn, because again, these are two very different planets that have different meanings, totally different. So it's like we're getting both at the same time, this reality check and this more serious, looking at things more seriously and honestly, but then the Neptune is still distorting some focus and what's going on here on some level. But it's the last quarter, it's the last big activation of this distorted reality that we're trying to work out and understand in a bigger way. And again, it can play out on different levels, personal levels. But I think the people most affected are the mutable signs in the later degrees. So there's something sweet there on Friday first thing in the morning, but it's going to be very dynamic and a changeable day as the day goes on, because right after that, the moon squares Saturn. Again, we're picking up on, again, another round of that serious heaviness and that pressure and that last quarter of what we've been dealing with already in the past. That's this last big activation of closing it out, of finalizing it, of ending it, of what's been making life so difficult in the background for some people. Not everybody. Some people have great lives right now, are doing well and loving life and have great opportunities. So, just because one person is having a difficult time obviously doesn't mean everybody is. So it all depends on your personal chart. But in the background, on the world level, this is showing a major issue. There's no doubt about it. Again, I feel like it's a warning for safety and security measures to be extra cautious, pay more attention. There's still things that are a little bit distorted, that aren't quite clear, from this because of the Neptune. But again, we're picking up on that heaviness there with that moon square. And then the moon is in conjunct to Uranus, right as the sun is in conjunct to Uranus, having to adjust to this local area, having to adjust to a little bit of a revolutionary vibe, or unpredictability, or surprises, or disruptions that will come along with what's coming into play here. Just things that are more shocking and surprising. Again, this could also be a day where everything about what's been hidden is being focused on multiple levels. So again, truth, conspiracy, scandals could be coming out in ways that are difficult and ways that probably still aren't 100% truth. There could still be some truth coming out, don't get me wrong, but that's the problem with this, is knowing what's real and what's not real. But some things are likely being exposed and coming out that were hidden and private still, and we're adjusting to information or surprises or just, again, volatility for Friday. And then that leads to the Sagittarius new moon in this brand new cycle that we're starting, which is going to be on Friday evening and Friday night for a lot of people. And then, like I was saying before, Saturday, December 20th, will be the new moon if you live in Europe and other places far away from me. So a new moon in Sag, ruled by Jupiter, exalted in the home and the family, but it has that tight square to Chiron. So this whole cycle has a over-amplified wound that we're generally dealing with here. So this is the new beginning cycle. And again, it's going to be this transition from Sagittarius to Capricorn, this more like fun, taking it easy. It's almost like a lot of the Sag was building up to this square, was more easygoing. And then we run into this square this week with Saturn, and it gets a lot more serious, and that kind of takes over the flavor of the cycle, because the cycle is square Saturn and Neptune, but also will come into Capricorn, which is a more serious, dry, more goal-oriented cycle that we're coming into here. So things get a lot more serious, a lot more heavier too. But again, it's this combination of picking up on the weight, the pressure that this new moon is talking about, and wanting to escape, wanting to, move into your own world. This is also kind of indulgent. Sagittarius at the last degrees with Venus ruled by a Jupiter and exalted, so it's like with that square to Neptune, be careful of checking out or avoiding things that you need to deal with or look at, or, drugs and alcohol. Be very, very careful of travel during this time, the next few weeks, because of like drunk drivers and crazy drivers that could cause some serious accidents or injuries, and again, I think that this is overall going to be a difficult cycle for travel. Now, even though this entire cycle is rooted in this square with Saturn and Neptune, I feel like this is the hardest part of it this week into next week. And then as all these planets start moving forward in Capricorn, it's going to get a lot easier, relatively speaking. It won't be just a solid month of challenges and difficulties, even though we still are going to be working on things behind the scenes that come into focus this week. But I think it'll get easier and easier after these planets pass this Sagittarius point. So this isn't your normal Sagittarius season. It's not your normal cycle of just, again, abundance and going big with things, and about beliefs and opinions that are more optimistic and hopeful. Again, we're running into something we're picking up on that kind of we feel has a challenge, that comes along with this. But the new moon square Neptune, so technically the sun and moon have gotten past that Saturn square, even though it's still a part of this cycle. It's going to start to wane. But Neptune is an applying square. So Neptune is actually the strongest aspect to this new moon. So a new moon square Neptune from the third quarter, or the last quarter as I call it. So it's a new moon that is a little bit fuzzy. That's a little bit distorted in truth and understanding. And kind of also it can, again, drain your energy a little bit. Sometimes people will not be as motivated. They could feel stuck, dazed, confused. Again, drugs and alcohol could be a major influence for a lot of people trying to escape their problems and their troubles, not wanting to accept reality or see what they must do or deal with, that's private behind the scenes, or energetically affecting people. Again, the collective unconscious is affecting the world right now in kind of a really negative way, about religion, about belief, about, again, martyrs and religious kind of action that I think this is all wrapped up into. So this is like literally the hardest part. It won't be this difficult as time goes on here. This is very temporary. But it is the new moon. A brand new cycle will start waxing forward from this point forward. So you got to just pay extra close attention to what's going on with your life with this cycle, this new moon. So do you have any personal planets at 28.5 roughly degrees of one of the mutable signs? Sorry, my phone keeps going off here. If you have 28 Sag, then this is a new moon right on your personal planet, whatever that planet means in your chart, or Pisces or Gemini or Virgo. Then you're really wrapped up into the kind of a forced change. Again, needing to be flexible and adaptable to new things that are starting. But at the same time, Venus is also square Saturn. That'll be exact later, but it's in play with this new moon. And again, kind of a tough love vibe that this new moon has about it. Or serious financial things happening from this cycle. Or again, relationship and where you stand in relationship. Because relationship could definitely be part of this dynamic in some way of duties and responsibilities or commitments and how you feel about those things. And are you taking on commitments? That's the other thing I've mentioned off and on for months about this transit is, sometimes people can take on responsibilities that they don't need to be doing, but they feel like they need to or something, false responsibilities, false commitments that are causing issues in your life that need to be released and let go of. But it could be on so many different levels. It all depends on each person. But that's what I'm seeing for this new moon, this new beginning that's rooted on Friday evening and Friday night. And then the moon will ingress Capricorn literally right after the square to Neptune. And the moon begins to enter this phase of looking above and beyond, looking at the future. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to accomplish this year for 2026? This cycle is going to really put us into those vibes of what we want to expand. It's just that we have to take care of something before we can fully expand in the ways that we might want to, based on something going on here from the past. But now that the moon is in Capricorn on Friday night, it's being ruled by that Saturn. Mars is being ruled by that Saturn. The moon is next to Mars, so it still has this intensity, this edginess about it, even though the Mars is strong. With Venus and the Sun still in these squares, it still is all red flag territory for me this week and into this weekend looking at this. At the same time, Mercury is entering that T-square with the nodes of fate, which will be perfect the next day as we move this forward. On Saturday, December 20th, the moon is waxing forward through Capricorn, ruled by Saturn from behind the scenes. It's a little more drier, a little, we're beginning to go through this shift of this more easygoing, optimistic, Sagittarius kind of vibe into this more serious Capricorn vibe. And it all kind of starts here this weekend. Still kind of looks super critical this weekend, though, with what's happening. Even Saturday morning with that Moon-Mars conjunction could show some conflict as well. So the first aspect is that Moon-Mars, and then the Mercury T-square, the nodes of fate, is perfect, 11-11-11 by Saturday morning, but it's all day on Saturday. Again, a fateful day, a fateful crossroads about thoughts, news, information that's been coming out, puts the world at a crossroads with new revelations or new information, exposure in some cases that have come out. And, with these squares, it can be literal conflict like we just saw last week with terrorist type of attacks, but it can also be weather issues that is really being stirred up with all this week into the weekend, next week too. And also, natural earth events too. It can be all of those are one or, with this of what's going on. But it's conflict, it's heaviness, it's serious stuff taking place in the world. For sure. And then that's when the sun is perfectly square Neptune for Saturday. And again, it can dissolve the vitality. It can distort reality. It can distort our purpose, our focus a little bit, to be more scattered, to be more dazed and confused, to feel lost. There can be a certain sense of uncertainty for some people, of what's going to happen next or something like that. I think there's still fear in the air, worry and fear. But Sun square Neptune, again, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people tapping out, feeling too overburdened. They can't handle it and they want to escape into their own world or avoid or procrastinate or, again, escape into drugs or alcohol or something like that. And for other people, you just have to make sure that you're not distorted in your perspective or your reality this weekend, or even all week long, and then peaking here this weekend. Just know that not everything is as it appears to be. Even though I still think some things are being exposed in certain ways, it's not 100% truth. There's no way it can be with this square going on. There's still some distortions, but we're going to be closing out those distortions based on what does come up this weekend into the weekend. And we'll be working on closing out those issues for the next couple months of whatever does show here. Ending old commitments, old duties, old pressures, old responsibilities, that are energetically affecting you. So how to make a better, healthier life. It goes back to these eclipses in Virgo and Pisces and how you live privately when no one's watching and what you do, behind the scenes that affects your everyday life. Okay, so then Sun square Neptune can also be, again, weather, ocean events, Navy issues that I talked about last week that also manifested. That I was predicting some sort of a Navy event. The U.S. seized an oil tanker. I didn't see a major explosion that I was predicting, but they did find a lot of explosive material with these different terrorist things going on, even though it didn't get triggered. And there could still be explosive events with all this too. There could still be some some issues with oil, with gas, with Navy, with weather, and again, conspiracies and scandals going through something. So be careful of being overly gullible with whatever you see or hear. And the moon also connects to the nodes of fate for Saturday, a trine and a sextile as the day goes on. So again, aligned with fate and destiny. It's a good alignment to, again, work on work, health, practicality, goals in those ways, and improving things. That could have a positive effect on the future. And then the last aspect for the day is Venus square Saturn, which again is a last quarter square. So it goes back to commitments and relationships of the past year and where you stand with those commitments. Remember, Venus was going retrograde in Pisces with Saturn back in the beginning of the year. Well, now this is one of the last tests, the last challenges to that conjunction of relationship dynamics that you've been dealing with this year. Now you're at the last quarter, and it's a test, it's a challenge on, do you maintain your commitments, or are you ready to let go of a commitment? Reevaluate this commitment vibe about relationship, and then also about money and resources. Do you have any big financial commitments you need to deal with? Do you have to take care of something financially in that regard? If you do, this will be a part of that process of dealing with it, of looking at it, seeing it. But normally I would say it's not going to be great for the stock market. I just don't know if they're going to override that a little bit, and because the market really is rigged, and it's okay. That you just have to know that, and it's still about, it doesn't matter who makes it go up or down. You just still have to figure out if is it going to go up or down regardless. But normally this would be a negative aspect, I would say, about money and resources around this time period. Now this is Saturday, so the markets are closed. So there you go. It won't really affect the market necessarily. This week though could, because Venus is close enough and the sun will do all that. In fact, let me look. It's Monday as I'm making this. Tesla's way up, but there's a lot of red in other areas here. So I would say generally it's probably more of a negative dynamic about money. I would not want to make, if you don't have to make a major purchase this week or into the weekend, then avoid it. Wait it out a little bit longer, because you may not want to buy something, especially a big ticket item, with Venus squaring Saturn. It may not have the results that you wanted. It may not have the value you wanted or something like that. There could be an issue with it. So I would avoid, again, buying a big ticket item. Now it's also Christmas here, so there's going to be a lot of spending. So maybe that's also on one level, Venus square Saturn, people spending a lot of money, maybe a little bit too much, overextended. There could be some debt that comes along with purchases or money during this time frame. And then there can be something that's a little distorted about it all because of the Neptune component. So just be extra cautious about spending and buying things, and just overall money dynamics. Kind of wait it out if you can. If you have to deal with something, then you have to, and that's part of it. But if you don't have to, I would kind of wait it out about money. And then it could be a test in love and relationship. Again, it's a tough love vibe. There's a restrictiveness. There's something distorting the pleasure of this time period. But because of the Neptune distortion, we may not see it very clearly in some way. On the other hand, because of Saturn is more the realistic planet, something could come out that we have to deal with in relationship. And again, I think if you have 25 mutable in your chart, then you're most likely continuing to be wrapped up in this dynamic that all the other planets made. So in my opinion, it's a big test this week for people. A test of character, a test of value, a test of honesty and truth and belief and faith. And there's this big religious component that's in a square that adds conflict. So again, a lot of that can be martyrs and religious attacks and false beliefs, and all that kind of stuff is really strong in the air, in the background. There could even be an issue with some financial, I don't want to make that prediction. I was going to say that I might predict like a bank or some sort of financial institution could go through some sort of an issue or an attack, but Not sure, actually. That's always possible with this. But when you get to this weekend, just in this whole week for that matter, just realize this is in the background and don't put too much expectations on people and relationships, and especially next week too when Venus squares Neptune. You don't want to go through disappointment or disillusionment or the opposite of making everything, jolly when it's not, or distorted relationship and values and things, and over romantic, or again, it's a very rare dynamic of having both of these influence a planet at the same time. Saturn and Neptune, totally different flavors of life. The dreams, the fantasies, the illusions versus the hardcore reality, and the seriousness and the commitments. It's all kind of fuzzy. So I do think this is probably not the greatest for travel and transportation this next 2 weeks. We're also not in the details, Now that Mercury is moving forward through Sagittarius, we don't have the details as much. We're more in this bigger picture, looking at what's above and beyond in the future, and we're just not very grounded. There's a lot of loftiness here too. Okay, but yeah, that's Saturday, and it's a tough love vibe. And then we get to Sunday, December 21st. The sun is at the last critical degree, squaring Neptune, continuing into Sunday before the solstice happens. And the first aspect is that Jupiter making that perfect square. But again, that's not a one-day transit. We've been going back and forth with that, but it is perfecting here on Sunday. Again, wounds, that the wounded healer is over-amplified, overextended. Too much is being hit on Chiron. It's like a square is too much of something from Jupiter, and there's too much wounds. There's too much need for healing, or even literally focusing too much on healing in the issues of life. Do you need to move past it? There's just too much of home, family, safety, security, wounds, safety, security issues that I've been talking about back and forth with that square. So it still indicates that there could still be issues happening in the world that are very wounding for people. Again, war, Aries, head wounds, trauma, accidents, attacks. It still looks like a strong possibility, And again, I've been kind of seeing in the United States chart that there is strong potential for an issue this next couple of weeks, I would say. So can't say exactly where it's going to be, unfortunately. But the potential is very strong. And then we get to this solstice on Sunday. The sun changes signs, a change of season, a change of focus. And yeah, this big turning of the wheel into this next season, this next phase of life with the solstice. And here we see the sun and moon are both in Capricorn. It's almost like a Capricorn new moon, even though it was rooted in Sagittarius. So now it's like a whole different flavor of life all of a sudden by Sunday into next week of Monday with all this Capricorn. That's, again, a lot more dry, a lot more serious, a lot more mature, punctual, and about work and career. And although this is right before Christmas too, obviously, but Mars is in between the sun and the moon. So there's still this aggressiveness, that's a part of everything. And the sun is going to be focused on Mars now from this point forward. There's going to be a lot of action, but there's also kind of a conflict in the air with Sun, Mars. The identity of the world right now is Mars in this temporary transit. Even though it's exalted, it's still, all these planets come back to Saturn of behind the scenes that got triggered and showing us what's going on here that we need to deal with, serious matter. So just, it's going to put more energy into your Capricorn area of life, wherever you have that. And again, generally it's about looking at what you want to accomplish and what you're committed to and all that kind of stuff. Again, the vibes just become much more serious and grounded and practical as we come into the earth sign here. Okay, and the moon is waxing forward, planting symbolic seeds of intentions through this territory. And then the moon is opposite Jupiter and square that Chiron. So the moon enters a T-square on Sunday night, Sunday evening, Sunday night. And again, does not look very easy with the T-square to Chiron at the apex, involved in the circumstances that are over the top. Things are culminating, things are big, with the Jupiter component between self, career goals, work, ambitions, plans, home and family needs, safety and security issues. And then that square that's still ongoing between Venus and these other planets squaring the Saturn-Neptune. So it just looks difficult. There's no way around it. I don't decide what's positive or negative. I just tell you what's going on here in the sky. So if you have an issue with it, talk to the big guy upstairs. Okay, and that is the last aspect, is this strong dynamic. Be extra careful of what you're engaged in on Sunday night, but really all week long. But especially with this T-square, there can be woundings, there can be injuries, there can be difficult feelings in some way. Of course, the moon isn't, at its best here in Capricorn either. But right after this, then the moon will start to make a sextile and stabilize the strong emotions and feelings that are happening. Again, it could be big energy with storms or weather and earth events, or again, this religious conflict peaking in some sort of an issue, whether that be another attack or something happening that feels pretty heavy. Okay, and we do get past that, and please don't get all sucked into, everything is just so horrible, everything's so negative, everything's so dark. I mean, these are just the ups and downs of life. We go through these cycles, and it's only temporary. There's ups and downs. But again, I think that once we get past this week, and all these planets come into Capricorn, there's less issues than what we're dealing with this week. Okay, and then we get to Monday on December 22nd. And the moon is at the last degrees of Capricorn and will be changing signs. But again, first thing in the morning on Monday, the moon does sextile Saturn and Neptune, stabilizing emotions and feelings. But on the other hand, the moon is going to change signs and reach Pluto. That will intensify circumstances with the community and potential friends. But, as I say, every month when the moon ingresses Aquarius, it's this phase for 2.5 days of trying to be more intellectual and objective and detached from the intense emotions, even though emotions and circumstances could still be really amplified and intense because of the moon Pluto. And then again, it's a symbol of transformation going through community and friends and social dynamics for Monday. And the moon connected to all the outer planets as it usually does in an easier way. And then the main aspect is moon Pluto for Monday. Again, emotional intensity, emotional transformation, circumstances going through changes and power plays within community and politics and friends. And this new phase for the next 2.5 days, that's asking you to release, let go of something too. That's continuing to be a need with this last quarter new moon. And then the last aspect is literally Venus in conjunct to Uranus. And next week we'll have a lot of volatility in the air with money and resources and relationships that are in this changeable place too. And then Venus is building up the square to Neptune for next week's report, which is always a red flag in relationship and money. So you got to be realistic with love and relationship and your money and financial needs and desires. Got to be truthful and honest. But Venus will start to get more romanticized, perhaps, and dreamy by next week. And then we'll change signs into Capricorn next week. So that's what we have. And again, there's a lot going on here. It's going to be a kind of a crazy week, most likely, with some more big events in the world that are going to happen. And then we'll move past it all, and we'll be in Capricorn, and things will get a lot easier. And then we'll be at the tail end of this Pisces, and we'll get to that Cancer full moon in January. All right, so I hope you guys have a great week ahead. And it's still not Christmas yet, so I guess I'll probably come back for next week, even though it's Christmas. It's just another day for me. But I hope you guys have a great week, and I appreciate you watching, and I hope, as always, it's helpful. At least I hope it's helpful. But anyway, you take good care. Catch you on the next one.